For sure. So in the APAC region, as you rightfully mentioned, scams is unfortunately the big one. And we've seen that rise drastically since the pandemic.
Okay, we are back with the lead crypto threat researcher, Arda Akartuna. Akartuna. I'm so bad with names. I apologize, sir.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
It's not an easy one.
The lead crypto threat researcher for the APAC region with Elliptic. I can't wait to get into what all that means. But thank you for being here, sir.
Absolute pleasure.
And to start with, can you please tell us a little bit about your history? What path took you to what you're doing now?
Yeah, fair enough. Oddly, my path to this present moment actually interestingly came through academia, which is not that usual.
In crypto, it's definitely not that.
Yeah, exactly. So I did I was basically doing a PhD in the future of money laundering, basically in the UK. And of course, fortunately, crypto did feature quite prominently when looking at that kind of research.
Sorry, what year was that?
Oh, this was a good question. This was like 2018.
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, so back in it was no way like this industry had not matured to this level back then. So so I was very much looking at it from a 2018 kind of standpoint. And yeah, so that kind of research took me to what I'm doing now at Elliptic, which is looking at threats that are facing the crypto sector and looking at ways that we can keep our industry safe.
So you're doing a PhD, and crypto featured prominently, I guess, in the because you were doing research specifically on the future of crime,
exactly,
right?
yeah.
And so crypto, obviously, crypto's past, and then you can kind of project forward.
Exactly, yeah.
And then I guess during your research, you're like, oh, this is quite interesting, this field.
Yep.
So then how did you enter this precarious space?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. I mean, obviously, it's very interesting. What I really noted back at the time was how fast stuff was developing. Now, obviously, it's even 10 times faster now. But back then, I mean, just looking at the way the space was developing, the unique use cases that the space has. I mean, we always have to remind ourselves in the job that we're in that it's not all bad, right? And we have to be very clear on that. It's absolutely not all bad. Unfortunately, with any promising technology, there are going to be bad actors that are going to look at it and say, well, how can I exploit that for my own personal nefarious gain? And that's what we're really here to stop. And I think when I look at how I came to this particular situation, it's more like, well, that's what's really guided me. It's like, right, okay, this is a great space. It's got a great use case going on. It's got great potential. How do we stop the bad guys from ruining that for us?
Right. So I know just from being in crypto, kind of on the retail side.
Yep.
Often crypto people are very protective of our industry.
Yep.
Because I would say from a public perspective, especially around 2017, 18, it had such a, I would say, overly negative feel. Did you ever get pushback or kind of suspicion from the crypto industry of like, here's another person who thinks we're all criminals and stuff like that? Or did you find that the industry at large was very welcoming to your perspective and knowledge?
It's definitely shifted dramatically. So yes, back in, when I was first looking at the space, 2017, 2018, I joined Elliptic in 2021. There was not necessarily directly, but there was this sort of feeling, of course, that by looking at transactions, tracing transactions, making sure transactions aren't associated with illicit actors necessarily. I mean, there was a situation where that was potentially viewed as a bit, is that exactly what we want, etc. But I think now what people realize, very much so, is that in order to, be accepted in the mainstream, in order to, make sure that the industry is successful, that it's very much necessary to ensure that bad actors aren't ruining it for us. And I think the industry's matured massively in those last 6-7 years, and in embracing the importance of blockchain analytics, of being safe and secure and being accessible to everyone.
So people have kind of warmed up to you. When you introduce yourself, people don't like.
Exactly. So no, I don't. I mean, to be honest, I never really got that.
Okay, that's good.
I mean, like if that general feeling did exist back then, I think it's certainly much more diminished now when people realize that this is an important part of the industry, making sure that we keep the ecosystem safe, right? It's not an attack on the ecosystem. It's actually attacking the people who are trying to exploit the ecosystem. And I think more and more people have come to realize that for sure.
One more question for me, Frederick. Sorry, one more follow-up question for me. So, from academia, has there also been like a process of maybe coming to be more accepting of it, like within the crypto industry? I can imagine academia maybe still being suspicious of crypto now, or has that also shifted towards a more, shall we say, less like antagonistic and more cooperative?
I think academia also sees the potential in this kind of technology for sure. When I look at the general state of the research when it comes to crypto, I mean, there's a lot of insightful stuff out there about how crypto is being used in many different jurisdictions to satisfy a lot of different unique use cases. Of course, we're looking at, we have loads of studies coming out or, currently being conducted about, how AI can be incorporated into enhancing the safety of the crypto asset sector as well. I think very much that academia is also coming around to the idea that, and of course, this will vary across researchers for sure, but very much coming around to the idea that, this is a technology here to stay, and we should do our best to, make it better in any way we can, be it through security, be it through other domains.
I guess I'll just piggyback off David here. So you're doing a PhD in money laundering.
Yeah.
Was that finance or law or cybersecurity? Like in what context was that?
It was very much multidisciplinary, so a bit of all of that stuff. So I did my PhD at the University College London, where there was the Law Centre for Future Crime. So essentially looking at it from a range of perspectives, right? The financial angle, regulatory angle, and again looking very much at the future, right? Like looking at trends in the past, to understand and project what the future might look like. So it was very much interdisciplinary in terms of the way we approach this, problem. And it's the same kind of thought process that guides how we do it at Elliptic, right? I mean, when we provide blockchain services, we of course want to ensure that the kinds of the kind of threats that we're identifying, we're not just thinking about the now and the now or the past. We also want to make sure that we're looking at what might be happening in the future, and how can we ensure that as Elliptic we can incorporate as much data as possible or as much research as possible to ensure that our tools are ready to capture that kind of future illicit activity, so that we don't have this sort of catch-up phase where we have to retrospectively try and do something about it.
Yeah, in Canada we say that you skate to where the puck is going. Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess that's what you guys are doing. So is
that a baseball analogy? No.
It's you guys have ice hockey, and
we have an ice rink very
British, right? British accent.
Yes. Yeah. So in the UK, I mean, in the wintertime you get a few popping up. Yeah, for sure.
Singapore.
Singapore, I have no idea. In Hong Kong, we've got quite a few.
Oh, Hong Kong is what I wanted to say.
Yeah, we've got quite a few, surprisingly enough. Yeah,
that's it.
I've never tried them out though, but now that you mention it, I might see.
Take a look, have a look.
I can do it without breaking some sort of my leg or whatever it might be.
Alexei Zamyatin was also at the College of London. He is working on a project called Building on Bob, and he did his PhD in computer science there. So never crossed paths with him.
What was the name, sorry?
Alexei Zamyatin.
For some reason, the name does ring a bell, but I'll definitely look up that research now that you mentioned it.
You can look them up. So what are your thoughts on companies like, we'll talk this a little bit offline, like Chainalysis? They pretty much do some of the things that you're talking about. They look at on-chain data. Mm-hmm. They're trying to detect fraudulent behavior, track criminals. There's that Netflix documentary that came out with the couple.
Oh yeah, that's
stole
right.
Billions.
Yeah, that's right. The Russian lady, and
is she Russian? She's American. She's a
Russian American, I think.
Yeah,
wasn't she?
Something like that.
But
there's a couple.
Yeah.
The rapper. Razzle Khan.
Oh yes. Yeah. Another case.
Yeah, it was an enormous amount of Bitcoin. Yep. They stole it. And it was the folks at Chainalysis looking at on-chain data combined with old school detective work. Yep. And they cracked the code, discovered that these were the guys who stole the money, locked them up in jail. Is that similar to what you're doing?
Yeah. So we're all blockchain companies, so we'll all be doing work like that basically. So what my team does at Elliptic is, we identify trends, we identify new typologies, emerging typologies, projected future typologies, and also, look at exactly how crypto is being used for illicit purposes now, and we ensure that the blockchain data associated with that is within our tools, so that law enforcement, as you mentioned, for example, in that case, virtual asset services are able to look at those transactions and ensure that none of that illicit activity is passing through their own wallets, passing through their own systems, and that they remain compliant. And so, throughout that process, of course, we will be, in contact with law enforcement and our virtual asset service providers and our partners to make sure that that process is very smooth and that it's all working effectively.
So most of your customers or all of your customers are going to be kind of businesses, not necessarily retail, right? It sounds like for Elliptic.
Oh, no. I mean, so of course, like, for example, in the past year, like the past 2 years, there's been an increasing interest, from traditional finance in crypto adoption.
Right.
So there will of course be, we're noticing an increasing number of amount of interest from that side as well. So there'll be a whole range of, different businesses, government agencies, regulators, for example, that are using these kinds of services to keep this ecosystem safe.
Do individuals use Elliptic, or is it again mostly like, as you say, I would think like businesses might want to use you, crypto businesses, right, to ensure that they're not receiving or sending funds that were ill-gotten. And then like governments would also avail your services from an analytics point of view. But like retail individuals, I can't imagine contact Elliptic that.
I mean, I as an individual use it very often.
Okay, really?
For my work.
Nice.
Right. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, you're right. It's predominantly businesses, predominantly government agencies, because that is usually the use case geared for that kind of organization.
And so a lead crypto threat researcher, that basically means you run a team.
So currently, I'm based out in Hong Kong, and I'm responsible for the APAC region for Elliptic for our research. So that will involve me. So as lead crypto threat researcher, what I do is I'm part of the wider research team of Elliptic, and our role, as I've just explained, basically what we do is we look at trends, we look at what's going on. Of course, in APAC, scams, unfortunately, massive problem. So we'll be looking at trends like that. We'll be looking at how this ecosystem is reaching the multiple millions and billions of dollars that it's currently being projected to make from crypto investors and victims, and ensuring that kind of data is ingested in our tools. So yeah, I'm responsible for the APAC, if you like, division of that kind of effort.
And do you have a software platform or the product that you guys provide to these institutions, like the government agencies and so forth?
Yeah.
So you have a software product that they can use to visualize some of these threats and the information and everything.
Exactly. So we have a whole suite of solutions. And of course, like the solutions that each organization will have will depend on, their specific use case. But we have, of course, our blockchain forensics tool where we can visualize graphs and do investigations quite effectively, called Elliptic Investigator. We have our entity due diligence tool. So if, for example, you're a bank or you're a virtual asset service and you want to partner with another virtual asset service and you want to check that, make sure that, they're on the right side of the compliance, etc., you'll be able to do the enhanced due diligence on that entity, for example. We have transaction monitoring tools. So if you're a virtual asset business, want to make sure that all your withdrawals and deposits are clean, that's the kind of tool you'll use. And we'll also have like wallet screening as well, what we call Elliptic Lens, which you can actually look at a wallet, make sure that, for example, the source of wealth or destination of funds don't touch anything illicit, per se, and make sure that you're on the right side of compliance for that as well. So most recently, we're very excited. We've launched also a data analytics platform, data platform where governments, for example, who want to build their own platforms using this kind of data could do so without necessarily having the front end UI, if that's what they prefer. And that's called the Elliptic Data Fabric. So yeah, we'll have a whole range of solutions which will be able to provide. We'll also have education products for anyone who wants to learn more about blockchain analytics and get certified. So yeah, a whole range of products, depending on exactly what the use case is, depending on exactly what business needs, we'll be able to help them out.
Awesome. So let's get into it. You mentioned scams.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about Let's start with the APAC region.
Yep.
But then I'd also like you to contrast that with other regions. In APAC, what are the buckets, the most common buckets of crimes that you see in Asia? And then moving from there, I'd like to hear about other regions.
For sure. So in the APAC region, as you rightfully mentioned, scams is unfortunately the big one. And we've seen that rise drastically since the pandemic. One reason why, we've seen that rise since the pandemic is, of course, a lot of, traditionally, organized criminals involved in traditional, like physical crimes, like drug trafficking, etc. Of course, found that, international travel restrictions, etc., due to the pandemic, kind of knocked out that business or made it much more problematic for them. And so a lot of them already have the massive resources of organized crime groups kind of started looking at, well, okay, maybe we should try a hand at scams.
Diversifying.
Of course, everyone in the pandemic on their phone, using social media, using online dating apps, provided a whole wealth of opportunities for that kind of victimization. And, this was always there, right? Telecom fraud, especially in the Southeast Asian region, was always there. But, at the start of the pandemic, especially, we see a massive rise in the numbers, unfortunately, of funds lost to these kinds of scams, quote unquote, pig butchering or romance baiting being one of those examples. And so we have seen numbers. We've seen numbers that have surpassed any other crime typology. Right?
Wow, really?
When we look at this kind of, illicit activity, it's not necessarily the scams themselves, but what we've done very proactively at Elliptic is we've actually looked at the illicit sort of online marketplaces where these scammers buy and sell things like the phone numbers of high net worth individuals, websites, with web UIs for like these scam investment platforms. AI deepfake tools, which they can use to basically, do video calls with victims and say, oh, hey, I'm a legit person. Yeah, let's have a romantic chat. So we're seeing like massive amounts of online marketplaces catering explicitly to this kind of
Are these on the
ecosystem.
Are these on the dark web, or are they just on like open net?
They're on like direct messaging apps, basically. Yeah, so it's not even on the dark web per se. And essentially, that we're seeing.
Wow.
Obviously, they use crypto as payment, which is both a good and a bad thing. Bad for our industry, good because we can trace it. And when we look at the amounts going through those kinds of online marketplaces, it's like, this is an outdated figure, it's a few months ago, but it's about 28 billion US dollars worth of crypto flowing through these illicit marketplaces. People buy things like deepfake tools and high net worth individuals' contact details, etc., etc. And that really goes to show just how like massive this crime problem has become. To put that into contrast, Hydra, which was once known to be one of the biggest dark web marketplaces, that had about 5 billion USD worth of transactions going through. And now we have these online scam marketplaces making, 30 plus.
That's wild.
It's an insane amount. So that's, of course, been quite a big priority for us, over the past few years.
Do you know where these marketplaces are based out of? Are they also based in Asia? Do you have a rough idea?
So
the servers are located in Asia.
So in terms of the activity we notice on them, in terms of who they're catering to, and like services that we've identified them to be linked to, it does seem that Southeast Asia is unfortunately a hub for this. We do have to give credit where credit is due to the authorities there. The Royal Thai Police, for example, doing massively good work in trying to stop this kind of activity from happening. Of course, we know that there are, organized scam compounds where these crimes are being perpetrated out of. In many cases, where the victims or the scammers themselves are victims of labor trafficking, on the border regions of Myanmar, in Cambodia, in certain parts of Laos as well. And of course, there's a massive effort at the moment going on to dismantle those scam compounds, and the scams that are being perpetrated from there, involving hundreds of thousands of people by recent estimates. You could tell from that 28 billion figure, just the economy that's underpinning that is massive. And so, of course, we're at Elliptic. We're doing what we can from the crypto angle to detect that, to prevent that, to ensure that, virtual asset businesses, law enforcement can trace, those payments, and do what they can to stop it.
What kinds of cryptocurrencies do you often see being used? Because I know Bitcoin is probably the most popular just because of the value. But with currencies like Zcash, Monero, and other privacy-oriented coins, is that making your life more difficult? Are you seeing more use of these privacy coins, or is it still just dominated by Bitcoin and some of the major cryptocurrencies?
So you'll be surprised, actually.
Stablecoins, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the vast majority that we see is in fact in stablecoin, and like as I mentioned, right, they're not using the dark web. They're not using the dark web. I don't necessarily know whether that's because, it's too sophisticated or whatever, but what these people like is convenience, right? Be able to just message each other and just buy and sell stuff. So by and large, we see stable coins being used because, of course, stable value, easy to obtain. You don't have to worry about the fluctuations in price, etc. Monero, of course, privacy enhanced cryptocurrency, but quite fiddly to obtain, right? And when we talk about the industrial scale which these guys operate on, they're looking for convenience and they're looking for stability and an easy token to cash out or cryptocurrency to cash out, basically. So stable coins are, very much their preferred.
USDT, I imagine.
No comment.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so APAC scams number one. Is there another bucket for?
So of course we're seeing. Cybercrime, the more traditional cybercrime. Of course, there's ransomware going on. Drug trafficking going on. Fentanyl, unfortunately, a big problem, big priority as well. Again, stablecoin use quite prominent in that. There'll be all sorts of different types of activity that we're also
but much smaller amounts.
Or comparatively to those tens of billions going through these scam marketplaces, yes, for sure. I mean, it is smaller, but it's still important, it's still prominent. I mean, those kinds of crimes can very much harm the crypto sector as well, and traditional sectors as well, right? Ransomware is not necessarily just a crypto problem. Hacks, it's a big one.
Yeah, right.
Yes, exactly. North Korean. Yeah, exactly. North Korean hacks as well. Big problem. That again, very much quite prominently a crypto problem. Very much emphasizes why we need to keep the industry safe and not cut corners when it comes to our cybersecurity, because we are on the radar of the Lazarus Group and associated North Korean hackers. So that's also something we're seeing quite a lot of, unfortunately.
Are they still very active? Are you finding that the Lazarus Group, they've done some really big hacks, the biggest hacks, I guess, in the history of crypto?
Yep.
They're behind all of those. Are they still active?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Very much so.
Very much so. Yeah. So of course. I mean, they usually rise to prominence in terms of the news media when they get an exceptionally big haul. But
right.
we do have to remember. I mean, they're not necessarily only after the billions and the several hundreds of millions, right? There will be much smaller hacks, for example, which we've managed to attribute to them. So it really could be 5 million, it could be 10 million, it could be even less in many cases. And the way they operate is, well, if they find a DeFi protocol, the smart contract with obvious bugs or obvious exploitable attributes to it, they will go for it, regardless of the amounts involved. Again, very much underscoring why we need to keep this industry safe.
Do you guys ever look at and I've asked this. So yesterday we had another guest who was talking about on-chain intelligence, but from an investing perspective. So using that data, instead of trying to find people stealing money, you're trying to find patterns in the data that'll give you alpha so that you can make better trading decisions, or you can see what certain wallets are doing and who's behind those wallets, just like you would do for a crime, and who's behind this wallet. But you want to know the identity of a fund or a trader, for example, so that you know what they're doing and you can copy, or you can kind of determine what the hot coins are of the day. Can your data be used for that same purpose by a retail investor who's more interested in maybe saying preventing a rug pull versus actually preventing an actual crime? Because a rug pull is not always a crime. It might be a crime of stupidity, but maybe it's not morally a crime.
Yeah,
maybe, yeah.
I see what you mean. So, yes,
can I go in and use your tools for that?
Yeah. So, two things that we're doing on that front. So, first of all, rug pulls or potential rug pulls, you can, as you suggest, not to obviously 100% accuracy. Let's be clear about that. But you can look at past, transaction patterns of the associated wallets involved. and make a reasonably decent prediction about, whether that certain token or project or whatever might end up in the same way. I mean, there's a number of heuristics, as we call them, that we can use to determine that level of risk. And our tools do use those kinds of heuristics, what we call behavioral detection, essentially to look at that kind of transaction pattern, not only for drug pulls, we can also do this for like so-called pig butchering or romance baiting as well, by looking at past transactions and making a sort of automated assessment of whether that wallet might be involved in something nefarious. Now, of course, again, never to 100% accuracy, but imagine if you're an investigator, if you're, a compliance professional, and you need a quick kind of lead or a little bit quick evidence to see whether, a certain path of investigation is something worth going down, or a certain token is something worth investigating further. We provide those initial pattern detected insights to help that. The other thing that we're doing, which I think is very exciting, actually, is where academia comes back in potentially into the fold, is using, for example, artificial intelligence for good, right? I mean, criminals are using it, to improve their scams. We should definitely be using it, and are definitely using it to enhance our pattern detections on blockchain to identify illicit activity. So we recently released a study as part of Elliptic where we actually looked at AI in terms of detecting illicit patterns, potentially looking at AI to identify illicit activity we didn't know of before. And of course, we're very cautious about bringing that into the mainstream, because what we don't want is false positives, right? We don't want AI to randomly identify innocent people's wallets as illicit and then cause them a whole lot of grief.
False positive.
We don't want that. We do not want that. So it's still work in progress. We're still looking at it. But essentially what we're trying to do is we're seeing, well, can AI actually enhance our intelligence and identify new illicit activity that we didn't know of before, and improve our capabilities that way. So it's very promising stuff, very exciting stuff. It's great to be part of it.
I imagine that's going to be like a cat and mouse game between AI developers, right? Like, developing tools to trick people and maybe even trick AI, developing AI tools to detect all that as well.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I just want to circle back to the crime thing. You're obviously focused on APAC, but I'm just curious, for other regions, is it a similar breakdown where scams are the number one way that crypto is being used illicitly? Or is it different? Does it break down differently for different regions?
I would say scams feature quite prominently no matter what region you're looking at. And, predominant reason for that is, of course, scams in the APAC region. So scams, for example, perpetrated out of these dedicated compounds in the Southeast Asia region. I mean, they're not just targeting people in APAC, right? Yeah. They're also targeting people in the United States. They're also targeting people in Europe. So it doesn't necessarily, shift too much in terms of regional dynamics. But of course, when we look at, regions like, Eastern Europe, of course, given the, conflict there, etc., we see some, like more dark web market activity, ransomware activity, etc., being perpetrated from those regions, credit card frauds as well. But again, I would say, scams very much are up there in terms of, the way they impact the world, really, globally speaking.
So is it safe to say that now crypto is the number one criminal activity for crypto is no longer drugs, as maybe the public would assume because of the history? It's now moved on to scams.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the data and the data we have, I mean, like our contrast, right? Hydra was 5 billion. And then you've got these illicit online marketplaces catering to scammers making like 30 billion. I mean, the data is pretty clear on that front for sure.
Yeah. There it is, folks. A maturing industry.
But what, so back in the day, we used to counter that argument of, Bitcoin is for drugs.
Silk Road, yeah.
It's for drugs. With, hey, there's more, fiat is involved in more crime and drugs than crypto. So how is that, ratio now?
Yeah, so this is exactly, this is a really, really important point, right? Because when we talk about, scams are massively skyrocketing in crypto, it's quite easy to misread that and say, crypto is really bad, whatever. Absolutely not. So what I say is it's really unfortunate that scammers are using crypto, right? It's really bad news for the industry. But it's also good news because unlike fiat, we can trace it.
Right.
We can trace it and we can potentially, find out where it's going and potentially get those funds back for you. So you don't really have that in fiat, which is why you can't really necessarily do a sort of calculation of, ratio or whatever.
I see.
But I mean, you do have to remember that, right? The good thing about this technology is that it is transparent. It is decentralized, which means that at least we can see what's going on. And like we're looking at all sorts of facilitated scams, right? We recently looked at, for example, deepfake sites that allow you to generate explicit images of people, for example, for the purposes of sextortion, for the purposes of romance scams, etc. And they take crypto payments to provide credits to use that service. Now you think, well, that's awful. I mean, that's a really bad name for the industry, but also it's good news because we can trace it. And we can identify the people making those payments and potentially even the subsequent money laundering of that service itself.
Right.
And we could stop it. And so, I mean, I think actually going back to the first question in terms of like blockchain analytics, what do people perceive when you say blockchain analytics? People recognize that now, right? It is crucial in that sense to be able to trace this stuff and stop this stuff.
Yeah. I was in Hong Kong for a conference some months ago. There was a great panel that was Tron, USDT, and then the other firms, I can't remember exactly, but it was on how Tron and USDT have partnered with basically a firm that helps vet USDT transactions and then get an immediate response from government authorities to stop like drug money being sent or this kind of thing. And the other company was run by like ex-FBI.
Yeah, right.
Like a real Fed, which is hilarious. But I mean, like very important stuff where you have these major crypto projects who are now working closely together with authorities to stop this stuff, and they can do it quickly because it's traceable, and it allows not only can you see it transparently, they can just freeze the funds. Right, like USDT can just freeze the funds instantly, and stop them being used. It's really, really important, and I think kind of an improvement.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is the very much underlines the importance of collaboration, which we're very proud to be doing. Data sharing as well. As part of Elliptic, we're very proud to have contributed, for example, data that led to the takedown of a major sanctioned Russian money laundering service earlier this year called Garantex. For example, the feds were able to use Elliptic data to actually identify and bring down that service very much, down as a result of that. So, this kind of collaboration is absolutely crucial. We're very proud to have contributed, as well as Elliptic. But yeah, very much underscores, right? I mean, it's traceable, it's decentralized, which means that, bad actors that seek to, give our industry a bad name and, cause pain and trouble for all of the, the great ventures that we see in this conference, right? We can actually stop with these kinds of technologies.
And do you find that as, you talked about from 5 billion to almost 30 billion in terms of the increase in crime that involves crypto. Have you seen the number of intelligence firms, crypto intelligence firms also rising in order to help with reducing that crime or catching the criminals?
Yeah. I think of course, crypto overall is a massively maturing industry, but the subset in terms of crypto intelligence, yes, we're also seeing more and more firms, come into the mix, offering different types of services, right? I mean, bespoke investigative services, for some of which use Elliptic tools, for example, will be, they're definitely, more numerous than they were before. Helping scam victims, etc. But on that note, of course, I'll be very clear that, again, even in that situation, the scammers are, very, very wide awake in terms of what they're doing. We're also seeing a lot of recovery scams of people pretending to be these kinds of crypto intelligence.
Yes, I've heard that too.
You've just been scammed. Oh, I can investigate that, but you pay me an upfront fee of God knows how much, and then I'll just appear with all that money. It's very cool. I mean, they're already targeting people in a very vulnerable position. So, of course, yes, we are seeing that. We're also seeing scammers take advantage of that as well. Very annoying, but what can you do? You just have to, be very aware and awake in terms of, the risks that are facing.
A gentleman who runs a service in Dubai told me advice for people was for projects who need to avail services like yours. It's really important to set up a relationship with the company well before the time that you need it, because the vetting process can be, like you said, there's scams that approach you, for example.
Yeah.
And so that you have to do your due diligence to make sure that you're not being scammed by scammers. And so that can take valuable time.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Right?
But it might be worth it. And I'll give you an example as to why. So quite recently, a new typology we've seen from our friends in North Korea is them using deepfake video chats to actually, undertake job interviews with crypto firms, essentially trying to get in as an employee into crypto firms, get sent a laptop, in which case they could download the malware and, do what they do. So, you do have to be careful. It might, yeah, exactly. You do have to be proactive. You do have to be aware of these kinds of trends, ideally before they happen, if it's all possible. It might be painful. It might be a pain, but it could be much more painful if we can't problems, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you were saying like the time is of the essence, right? Like within like a day, those funds can be transferred sometimes out of there. Like it gets harder and harder to freeze the funds. And if that time is being spent to be like, you get sent a Telegram chat like, "Hello, I'm from Coinbase. I need your help." And you're like, let's see if this is real. Yeah.
I mean, good bit of advice is ask them to defame Kim Jong-un.
Sorry, you say that again?
Ask them to defame Kim Jong-un. If they don't do it, that's a way to catch them out, which I've seen some people do.
Wow, very, very cool.
So there you go.
Very unorthodox too.
Oh, I love it.
Like unexpected, but that's a good idea.
So, I think in the West, so I'm from America, and terrorism word gets thrown around a lot, connected to crypto.
Yeah.
It's like a catch-all to get things done or banned.
Yeah.
You haven't mentioned terrorism as a bucket. How much is crypto being used for terrorism, if at all?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And we're very careful about this because, of course, terrorism is one of those crimes, along with child sexual abuse, which can give any industry, a very, very bad name. If its use is overstated in any way. And again, it comes back to that same problem, right? We can maybe give some estimates in terms of, how much crypto is being used by terrorists. The fiat side of it is probably much, much, much more. Definitely much, much more. But we can't get an accurate figure of that. I mean, when you look at, the major terrorist groups around the world at the moment, a lot of them have made fortunes through things like, off oil deals, selling, historical artworks, doing all sorts of drug trafficking as well. And making absolute fortunes as a result of that, all of which pretty much is in fiat. Now, of course, crypto. The reason why we're looking at crypto as a risk in this field is because, of course, the US, predominantly many parts of Europe, the European Union has been very proactive in trying to sanction, entities, businesses, proxies that are being used to actually sustain, that kind of wealth. And as a result of that, of course, a lot of let's say certain organizations are looking at crypto as a way of saying, well, can we circumvent these sanctions and, initiate a flow of transactions that basically, are outside, the traditional financial system and therefore, can't be blocked or frozen as a result of those sanctions. Recently, we've identified some stable coins, which are being used potentially for this kind of purpose. We've even done an expose recently about one called A7, A5, not necessarily connected to terrorism, but very much to sanctions evasion, and therefore a risk in this field. So, so we are looking at those kinds of risks. Again, being very proactive in terms of identifying those kinds of risks, so our industry is kept safe from them.
All right, so we have about 5 minutes left. If it's okay, I'd like you to put on your academic hat for a second.
All right. Okay.
And talk a little bit about some topical news related to crime and justice and stuff like that.
Okay.
So recently in the U.S., we had the semi-conclusion of the Tornado Cash case.
Yep.
And I was a bit disappointed with the verdict. I know it wasn't as bad as everyone thought, right?
Yep.
Like the stronger allegations or accusations were dismissed, unless the government wants to have a retrial for that. But he was found guilty of, was it like unlicensed money transmitter?
Yeah,
right.
Conspiracy to operate a money transmission business.
Yeah, So I'm not sure how much aware you are of the Tornado Cash case,
of course, yeah.
but I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think about the case from like an academic standpoint? Do you see anything interesting about this? How will other jurisdictions what kind of look at this? It's like smart contract, like decentralized smart contracts that take money in and mix them or send money out, but there is no one's like holding the money. There's a coder, someone who created the code. So anyway, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, so academically speaking, it's interesting because one of the longest running debates in academia about crime and criminology is how do you define it?
Okay.
How do you define?
Oh, I love it. Let's go. Get into that.
So this is an interesting thing. At least the crime science discipline which I studied. I mean, we're very clear. We're not getting into that. Crime is whatever's defined as crime by the laws of the land.
All right, gotcha.
So I mean, this might be very simplistic, but if the law of the land defines that as an unlicensed money transmitter, as far as I'm concerned, I don't really have any sort of anything else to say on top of that. If it does, that's what it is. If it doesn't, that's what it is. But I mean, it's an interesting case in that it definitely is going to probably set some precedents for the industry. I mean, smart contracts. I don't think any jurisdiction, say, has directly been able to fit this into existing regulatory frameworks completely or comprehensively. So this is probably going to be one, as you say, that other jurisdictions are going to probably be looking at, saying, right, okay, what's going on here? What we're going to be doing about it in our jurisdictions as well. Of course, you've got a lot of jurisdictions that look to the places like the EU or the US as a sort of right. Let's have a look at what they're doing.
Right, exactly.
Let's see how well it works and see if we can then kind of copy elements of it that work in our context, in our jurisdiction as well. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what's going on here. But there's also the geopolitical angle when it comes to, let's say, unlicensed money transmitters. Not necessarily Tornado Cash, but a lot of those who are very openly accepting illicit funds, for example, they're not based in the US or Europe. They're founders or whatever. They're not based in the US or Europe, and they therefore remain kind of outside of their realm necessarily of direct enforcement. And so, what do you do in that situation, right? Tornado Cash, okay, fine, you might have sanctioned it. Of course, it's been unsanctioned recently, but you might have sanctioned it. Okay, you might have taken down, the operations behind them, etc. The academic question for us is, where are they going to go next, right? Because if you're making tens of millions of dollars, a month from scams, you're not just going to retire and be like, oh, actually, fine, I won't do it anymore just because, your favorite service got sanctioned or taken down. You're going to immediately look for an alternative. So that's the question we always ask, both academically and at Elliptic, right? Where are they going next? What's the next thing that they're going to try and use? And do we have enough visibility over it to make sure we're kept safe and that we know what we're doing?
Do you have an answer for that? What's?
Oh, it's constantly changing.
It's constantly changing. It's like whack-a-mole then?
Kind of, yeah. So, I mean, Garantex, of course, is sanctioned. The next one they tried to use was Sprinex. That's been sanctioned, I think, like a week or 2 weeks ago or something. So, yeah, it's almost like that, right? But the good news is, that gradually, I do think, the avenues for like laundering multiple hundreds of millions is getting.
I mean, that's the hard part, right? You need the liquidity really to kind of shield the funds or mix them properly.
Exactly.
So it is kind of effective, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So you get these situations where you've got North Korea with like hundreds of billions to launder, or you've got these scammers, for example, with hundreds of billions. The window for them, at the very least, is being narrowed by this kind of action.
How about a philosophical question, which is the tension between privacy and crime prevention?
Oh, yeah.
Because you guys are, in a way, should I say, intruding on people's privacy by
de-anonymizing kind of thing.
De-anonymizing their transactions so that you can tell who's doing what. And some people say, hey, look, I use a mixer for privacy because I don't want people to see what
I don't want people to see how much money I have in my wallets.
Yeah, like my salary or what I'm buying today, my growth, whatever it is, right? My taxes, how I'm using my money. So I'm using a mixer, but at the same time, you guys have the technology to de-anonymize those transactions, and then you can see what I'm doing. And maybe I'm committing a crime, maybe I'm not. There's tension there, and there are arguments for both. both sides. So what's your own philosophical position on that?
That's a very, I mean, that's a very important point. So what I'll just say, I mean, actually, I mean, you did touch there on like common misconception. We talked about earlier about people looking at the blockchain and tech sector with a bit of skepticism.
Right.
As a result of this, right, we don't trace random individuals for no reason, right? Unless you're someone who's sanctioned, unless you be found guilty in a court of law or whatever it might be, right? We're not going to practically go into like some random wallet, looking at what they're doing with a mixer, and seeing, whether they're evading tax or whatever, right? We don't do that. That's not our role. Our role is to provide actionable intelligence to law enforcement, to virtual asset businesses, so that they can make their own assessment. Is this thing worth investigating or whatever it might be, right? What all we're really doing is making sure that we've got very obviously illicit activity on the blockchain labeled and traceable. North Korean hacks, sanctioned activity, terrorist financing, whatever it might be, so that law enforcement, so that virtual asset businesses and compliance professionals can make that determination themselves of whether something should go for further investigation. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, philosophically speaking, personally, I'm all right with that. If I'm honest, I think overall it does good for the industry. So, I mean, my conscience is, it's all right. Exactly.
All right, well, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you for this
very much.
marathon session. We just peppered you with questions for about 40 minutes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.